David. Share the first 20 minutes. I'll give you 5 at 15, yeah?
Yeah, thank you, Max. My name's David and I'm an addict.
Hello, David.
I really didn't want to come and do this today, but when I got the call, I've been told when I came into NA not to turn down service if you can do it. And my head's telling me, no, you overate yesterday, I had a bad day yesterday, I was supposed to do a chair yesterday and I cancelled. And my head's going, well, if you couldn't do one yesterday, how can you do one today? My head was doing all this stuff. But the overriding factor is, I've been taught to be of service because we only keep what we have by giving it away. I just have to say, I love this. I don't know what this is. This is some sort of group inventory. And this is like, I've been to so many meetings where they are not doing stuff like this in their business meetings. And I just have to say, it's lovely to see people really following the programme because the traditions are part of that. This is one of the meetings that really helped carry the message to me. And I'm really privileged to be in this meeting sharing. This is a meeting, I've spoken to people even in different parts of the country and they know this meeting, So it is a real honour to be here. I think I'm stalling for time because I'm a bit nervous, so I'm going to try and share new in NA. I suppose my journey in NA started a little bit before I arrived in NA, when I kind of admitted to myself when I was about 20 years old that I think I might have a problem. And my parents knew somebody who must be well over 30 years clean in this fellowship, but and he carried the message to me. But I ended up, initially, I went to a different fellowship because it was near to my house. And I loved the NA meetings. I felt more at home there, but I always went to this other fellowship where I didn't feel at home. And I never really got the message there. And, I hit a rock bottom. As I've come into recovery, I know there's many rock bottoms, and when you hit rock bottom, there's always a trap door, and there's always another one. And I hit a rock bottom, and at this point, I was smoking weed every day, and smoking as much crack cocaine as I could. And I went to the meetings, and I wasn't doing it for me. I was doing it for my family. And it didn't work, because I wasn't doing it for me. It says in our literature, I think it's in step 3, we have to do it. We made the decision. We have to do it for ourselves, not our families, friends, probation officer, judge, that page in step 3 of the basic text. And I was doing it for every other reason apart from myself. I didn't want to stop. And I managed to get about 4.5 months white-knuckling it, going to about 2 meetings a week. I was going to one meeting in the other fellowship, and I was going to the one meeting in Leytonstone on a Tuesday night. And, basically what happened was I was so deep in the disease, and I had such low self-esteem that I was still looking for ways to fix myself. So I came into the rooms, I heard about heroin, and I thought that sounded like a really good idea. And I went out and tried that. And literally 5.5 months after I first tried it, that landed me in rehab. So I think that tells you everything you need to know about that one. I really took to that one quite quickly, And the pendulum swung from cannabis straight to heroin. I was still using cannabis the whole time, but it was really just when that happened. That time in the meetings was just it all went out the window, and then I first of all, the Salvation Army picked me up, and I kind of got sent off to this like Christian rehab. But I ran away from there from 5 days, and I remember being in Nottingham, like by this Tesco in Nottingham. Like I'd run away from this farm, and I found a Tesco, and it was crazy, right? And I found this like. I thought, I'm going to do this on my own, you know, I don't need anybody, I had no mobile phone on me, nothing. And I thought, I'll find a cigarette off the floor, I'll ask somebody for a lighter, all will be well. And I couldn't find a cigarette. After 2 hours, I couldn't find one butt on the floor. And I gave up, and I found a payphone, and I reverse charge called my parents, and I begged them to help me. Which I think was another rock bottom, but there was no surrender that comes with it. I heard somebody once share, you know, a rock bottom has to come with a surrender. There was no surrender there. I just didn't want to be walking around Nottingham town on my own, you know, but I didn't want to stop using. So I ended up in like what I would consider a proper rehab, not a farm somewhere. But if that works for some other people, fine. I'm not judging. It did not work for me, and so I ended up in a rehab in Bournemouth, and I did the first 3 months, and I graduated, and then I did loads of fellowship. Like the message was really carried to me, like in there. We had to go to 7 meetings a week. You know, so I really got a feel for it, and but I wasn't really getting the honesty thing. I understood other stuff, but I didn't want to share in meetings. I thought I'll just keep my mouth shut, and you know, I've heard it described as, you know, coming up through the chair via osmosis. I've heard a speaker describe it like that, and I really relate to that. I thought I was going to sit in the chair, like you're all doing now, and it was just going to come, recovery was just going to come to me. I didn't think there was any action I had to put in. And suffice to say, I wasn't getting honest. I did get a sponsor in there, but in the other fellowship, I suppose some people would describe it as microwave recovery. And I did a bit of that. And I remember like my first experience of a step 3 was, he goes, well, you've admitted you're powerless, and you know you're talking to me now, and then we'll go to this church. And I'm not a Christian; I come from a Jewish background, but he took me to a church, and he's like told me to say a prayer, and he said, "You've done steps 1, 2, and 3. Now get on with step 4." And I went, "Hold on a minute, have I? Okay." You know, and I tried to write this step 4, but I was leaving stuff out. Oh, I can't tell him about that sexual stuff. I can't. And I relapsed. I caught with resentment. I was holding on to it for 3 days. I wasn't able to share on it. Long story short, some stuff happened. I relapsed in Bournemouth for 5 days. During those 5 days, my parents swore they wanted nothing to do with me. I'll try and speed it up because I'm aware I'll just talk the time away and not even get to half the topic. So, yeah, I relapsed in Bournemouth. The drugs didn't even work. They didn't even work. I remember taking that first hit going, this must be a bit of shit gear, because it didn't work. And then I went out the next day and got another one, and that didn't work. And then I just resided to myself again the fact that, you know, I'll just be homeless in Bournemouth, that's fine, I've done it for a few days, I can... And then my parents decided, bless them, they do love enabling me, and they decided, you know, to bring me back into the family home. And they said, but you've got to go to a day programme. Again, I was just like, I didn't want to do it. 2 weeks later, I was back smoking weed. I was out in East London, like finding homeless people to score off because I had no numbers. They took all my numbers away from me. You know, it was like, I was really... And this just went on for years. Cut a really long story short, I ended up in a really toxic relationship. And, you know... For the first time, I saw somebody whose disease had progressed more than me, and I thought, fucking hell, is that what my parents have had to deal with, you know? And eventually, my ex, she went into rehab, and I couldn't get clean. And I thought, well, I need to be clean so I can stay in this relationship. But I was so powerless. I had no control. I was in obsession, compulsion. I couldn't stop going. I was living in temporary accommodation at the time. My parents, by this point, wanted nothing to do with me. They finally stopped enabling me. And I went, literally, my days in the last 2 years consisted of where I was staying, the cash point, the shop to get some fags, and where the dealer was. Occasionally I'd walk to the chicken shop if I was hungry, and that was it. That was my life for 2 years. It was really like, it talks in the literature about animal level. I feel like for me I was there. There was nothing. I was suicidal with in between. Like 90% of the time I was suicidal. And I remember this one day, my last rock bottom, and this was where the surrender occurred. I went to the cash point to get 50 quid to go and pick up. And I went to the spot, and his car pulled up. And I walked up to the window going, "Have you got that, mate?" And they took the money, and they pushed me away. And I called the dealer up, and I went, "I think your guy's just robbed me. He was in this such and such car." He went, "That's not our guy." And I thought, oh, fucking hell. And what did I do? I went straight back to the cash point, got another 50 quid and stood back in the same spot. Like, it sounds insane, but to me it was the most normal thing to do. And I was rushing because I didn't want to miss the actual dealer. Do you know what I mean? And I remember going home and I used. And then I had some sort of breakdown. And I don't know where this came from, but I think this was the surrender. I just was like, whatever's out there, help me. And a thought came into my head, David, why don't you go to one of those meetings? And I thought, yeah, it's a good idea. It took me a week to get to a meeting. And the only meeting I'd ever felt really, truly comfortable with at that time was the Tuesday night meeting in Leytonstone, which today is now my home group. And I remember I walked in there and I saw the only person who I'd kept in touch with from my very first time around, and he was there and he was doing the chair. And I remember thinking, oh, something's going on here. I can't, that's not a coincidence. I now know today there is no coincidences. Things, I believe, happen for a reason. And I was on Subutex at the time, and I thought, you know what, I'm really going to give this a go. And I decided to, basically I started to take on some suggestions. People were saying go to meetings every day, and I was like, I don't need to go to meetings every day. I'll go to 1 or 2 a week, that'll be enough. And I really genuinely believed this. And I got this guy, I was really I think I said in a meeting once that nobody will sponsor me because I'm on Subutex. So this guy came up to me after the meeting, not my current sponsor, but my previous one, and he said to me, I'll sponsor you. And I thought, that's a bit weird, that doesn't feel right. But I did it anyway, and it didn't work. Me and him ended up having a massive falling out. And a few months later, I heard someone share at my home group, who is now my current sponsor, and I think he saw my willingness, because even though he said he didn't really have time to sponsor me at the time, I just kept phoning him anyway. And a few weeks later, I asked him again to sponsor me, because I was like, no, this is the guy. this is the guy. And eventually he said yes, and he said, but, I'll work with you, but we can only go through the steps when you get clean. And I thought, wow, I better get clean then. And he started suggesting to me, why don't you go to some more meetings? And I thought, I am in a little bit of pain, maybe that sounds like a good idea. Because I'm really self-willed, I don't want to let go of my control. I think my way is the best way. I now know today, step 3 says, we turn our will and our life over to the care of God as we understood him. And I realised that's kind of what I was doing. I was practising those spiritual principles, and I thought, you know what? I'm getting a bit lower on the subtext now. Maybe I should go to a meeting every day. And I started going to meetings every single day. And I remember how much better I felt. And then the detox was a little bit more bearable. And what I also did was it was suggested to me to take people's numbers and to call them. And again, I wasn't really willing to do that. I would call my sponsor, maybe call one person. And then, as it says in the literature, when the pain gets great enough, somebody suggested to me, David, you need to smash the phone. Thank you, acknowledged. And I started to do that. And it's still up and down with me. I'll go through these periods where I'm really like on the phone calls, and then I'll take my will back. And I'll think I'm all right again. And then I'll start acting in my defects, and I'm like, oh, maybe I'm not connected enough. Because it was also like I discovered the opposite to addiction is connection. If we are not staying connected by coming to meetings every day, especially when we're new in NA, if we're not coming to meetings every day, we're not actively working with a sponsor, being completely honest with them about what's going on, every little thing. Like, I remember I used to ask my sponsor, have I done enough recovery today to earn a trip to the cinema? Like, seriously, like I was that obsessed about getting it wrong. I was like so scared of being in self-will. And I knew that I was still. That's why I was overly overly enthusiastic about my recovery, I suppose. And I remember when I finally got off the subtext and I got that day clean, my sponsor always said to me, he said, David, you're going to get that day clean. And I remember thinking, no, it's never going to happen. I'll probably mess up. But it was like, no, take it just for today. I was like, just for today, I won't pick up. If I want to use tomorrow, I'll go and use tomorrow. And funnily enough, every day I woke up and then I got clean. I had this one day clean. And I wrapped myself around the fellowship. I met somebody in the morning and in the afternoon. And I went to a meeting and then I went out for a bit of fellowship. And I got through that first day clean. And then I really, like, the stuff that I'd heard other people were doing, I really started to implement it. I was waking up and I was trying to pray to whatever's out there. It doesn't matter, it's a God of your understanding. But my experience is, I did not believe in God, but I started praying. Over a period of time, I have come to believe in a higher power. And, I really draw strength from that today. And, and I started meditating. I found this really great app on my phone, and I started meditating, try and do 10 minutes in the morning and catch a few snippets throughout the day. And I write a gratitude list. And sometimes it becomes a bit like a tick-in-the-box exercise. Other days I really connect with it, and the days I really connect with it is the days when I get the most out of it. If I'm in a rush and I'm just writing it, same as yesterday, copy paste. But when I actually sit and think about it, or have a little look out the window and think, what am I grateful for? Look at nature, how beautiful is that? Get really, just really try and look within, because if you're doing it as an exercise from the head, gratitude kind of doesn't. I don't know. It doesn't work for me. When I do it from the heart, and I'm going through a bad time during the day, and I think, but I'm so grateful. I'm clean today. I've got my family back in my life. I've got great people in my life who care about me. Wow, I've got good things going for me today. I've got my ups and downs. I still struggle with my defects, And I've been doing that for the last 18 months now. Since I got that day clean, I've had to do all of that stuff every single day, whether I like to or not. And the days I don't, I pay for it. I really pay for it. This week, the last few weeks really, I'll kind of finish in a moment. I took my eye off the ball. I started to think that I didn't need to make so many phone calls. And, I was dropping out the odd meeting here and there. And I was trying to work on one of my defects around my issues with food, and I had about 170 days of abstinence from overeating. And I relapsed last week because I was dropping out suggestions, you know. And I was still doing a lot of recovery, but just the odd little thing. Like not calling the person I know I should be calling to discuss that problem. I'll call a newcomer instead. But then my head goes, well, you've made a phone call, so that's fine. But I wasn't honest, which I think is the core spiritual principle. That's my opinion, but I think it is the core. Without honesty, nothing else follows for me in this program. Brutal self-honesty. And when I've got that, it follows. And I really struggled to claw it back this week. I ended up in KFC yesterday. I haven't had fast food for 6 months. I ended up eating KFC yesterday, and afterwards I came out and I felt like picking up. And I had to call my sponsor and have a good hour-long chat just to calm myself down, because the obsession to use was on me. When I act out in one defect, you know, it backs you into that corner you might not get out of clean. It says in the literature you can't get out of clean, actually. It doesn't say might. It says you can't get out of clean. That's the words it says in the basic text. And thank God today I've woken up. It is a Just for Today programme. I woke up, been really diligent with all my suggestions. I've made plenty of phone calls today. I'm being of service. And today, hopefully I won't overeat. I won't pick up drugs. You know, I'm over 18 months clean. I can't actually believe it. It's something like, it's over 561 days. I've just been doing this one day at a time. That's all I do, is one day. And I feel like I've left so much out. I've heard it, I just want to say a couple more things that I think are really important. I've heard it described before. You've probably heard it in this room before, but there's a really good analogy. Recovery is like baking a cake. If you don't put all the ingredients in, it's not going to come out right. You won't get out a cake. That's recovery. If you don't put in 100% into your recovery, it's not going to come out right. You're reserving a little place for a relapse down the line. I'm not going to be honest about that. I only need to make one phone call a day, not 2. I don't need to call my sponsor every day. I don't need to share that little thing, you know. I don't need to go to that meeting. I've been to that many this week. I can leave that one out. You know, it's just about doing the things we don't want to do. That's what recovery is about. And something else that I really hold on to, and I leave it on this. I always like to finish on this because it gives me so much. I don't know what the word is, but it does something to me. When I first heard this, and I will tell it to you now, if you're not getting excited about your recovery, your disease is getting excited about your relapse. So, yeah, thank you. I'll leave it there.